Yes, hello, and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. Week 8 is in the books. It was a tight end week. So let's get into it.
I just wanna rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes, it is a Monday night. We have the best three of the Wildcard crew. It is what week was it? Week 8. It was done. I had a mind blank then. It was an amazing week. I had one of the best betting weeks I've ever had, and we will get into that very, very shortly. But first, we will bring in Hannah herself. How are you doing on this Monday evening?
I'm good, thanks, Paul. I'm in a mini depression again because of the Bengals, but I think I just got to kind of get over that and realise they're going to be terrible this season. But I really enjoyed the week. Like, on paper, so many of these games looked like they were going to be really rubbish, but they were great fun. There was loads going on, lots of one-score games. So I really enjoyed the week, as I say, ignoring the Bengals.
Yeah, and the witching hour was just like insane yesterday as well. There was like so many games just changed and just so much going on that I completely agree with you. It was an absolutely insane week. But yes, let's bring in other co-host Lewis. How are you doing on this Monday evening, my friend?
Rams win, Cardinals win, Bengals lose. Perfect week.
Come on!
We made loads of money. Hannah's team lost. It was a great week. What more could you want?
Lewis, you need to be nice to Hannah. This is her last show for 4 weeks, okay?
I'm mad at her. That's why I'm being cruel. I'll miss her.
Oh,
I know, I get it. Remember, Paul, last time I was off, I know Paul showed how much he missed me and said how great I was. So I get it.
Yes, yeah. Let's see in a week's time when we're like, Mum's away, the boys will play, yeah, and the show will just go to shit for 4 weeks.
I know. I dread to think.
But guys, let's get into some big news and let's start talking about what's happened this weekend and stuff like that. But first of all, I just want to remind everyone that after last week's week of no bye weeks, which was really random, this week we have the 49ers and the Steelers on bye weeks. But let's get into the big news. Jordan Love, guys, I've struggled to find much about what's happened to Jordan Love, and I know he was trying to play, and the coach pulled him in the end, didn't he? Because he was unable to sort of protect himself and get away from anything that was going on. But what was very weird for me was it was like he was unable to put weight down on his leg, but now they're saying it's a groin injury. I know he's been for an MRI today where they said the news was positive out of that MRI scan. Do you guys have any information that will help us with Jordan Love? And if he is going to miss some time, let's talk about this in a fantasy way. How do we feel about Malik Willis coming in? We have seen it already this season, but are we happy to sort of start him in week 9 if Jordan Love is out?
So on Jordan Love's injury, the most that we have currently is a report from Ian Rappaport a couple of hours ago, which is saying that it's a groin strain, nothing major. Well, they'll do treatment and monitor throughout the week, so nothing about his game status just yet. In terms of Malik Willis, so from an NFL perspective, I've been really impressed with Malik Willis. Obviously, he's actually the only quarterback alongside Patrick Mahomes to go undefeated so far in the NFL. Now, he only played 2 games, but he did win both of them. And considering what we saw in Tennessee, I'm really, really happy for him as a prospect that I quite liked. I think definitely we should be very complimentary to Matt LaFleur for being able to coach around him and his deficiencies, because he is quite a different quarterback to Jordan Love. From a fantasy perspective, in the 2 games that he played, he was QB6 in week 3, but he was QB20 in week 2. when you look against the matchup upcoming against the Lions, so if he plays 1 week, it's against the Lions, and then the Packers have a bye. So if Jordan Love does miss time, it will only be 1 week and he'll be back by that'll be week 11. The Lions so they're middle of the pack against quarterbacks, 14th best, so slightly better than average. But they are the second best team against running backs. And obviously for Malik Willis, a lot of the production is probably going to come on the ground, and the Lions are really strong against the run. So not someone I'd hugely be interested in, not someone I'd be willing to spend a huge amount of my fab budget on, unless I was incredibly desperate. But I don't think there's a huge potential for him to, he's not going to be a league winner. And the most he has a chance to do on your fantasy team is be a week winner. And I think that's quite unlikely against the Lions.
Hannah, anything to add on that?
No, I pretty much agree with Lewis. To be honest, I think this is a game that they're going to be playing from behind, and I think ultimately that means that he's going to have to try and throw, and I think this is where that kind of his deficiencies will be most evident. So I'm just not sure that the Packers are going to be able to control the game script enough to be able to kind of hide him. So I don't think I would want him against the Lions this week. Like, I'd much rather be picking up James Winston or someone like that, where I know that he's going to have probably a safer floor than Malik Willis. So I agree. I'm not really looking for him unless I'm super desperate in a super flex league. Although, to be honest, I probably would rather just put in a wide receiver, a running back, or if I was brave, even a tight end over, Malik Willis, to be honest.
Well, we'll mention tight ends in a little bit, I'm sure, but yes, a tight end would be a great person to put in Superflex at the moment. But I have to agree with you. I think in a game when they're behind and they have to throw the ball, I think that's when Malik Willis will become a bit. You might sort of start seeing his true colors again. He's somebody that if he can rush the ball a little bit and play like that, I think he's a good quarterback. But in a game where it's a bit of a shootout and they're trying to play catch up, I think he may struggle a little bit. But one of the other injuries this weekend, which was a bit more of a worrying injury. I'm trying to get my words out there. It was to Stephon Diggs, and unfortunately he went down. And it was a non-contact thing, so it's always tough to watch them ones where you see them just drop to the floor and there's nothing happened or anything like that. From what I can see, they're saying that they haven't confirmed anything, but they're saying it could be like an ACL, which is obviously a season-ending one and stuff like that. But how do you guys feel about Tank Dell? Obviously, Nico Collins is. I don't know if he's back this week or whether he's missing another week. I can't remember when they put him on IR. Is it week 10 he can come back? So obviously no Nico Collins. Now Stephon Diggs could potentially be out and heading towards IR depending on what the injury is. Are you wheels up for Tank Dell, or are you maybe on the side of caution? Hannah, we'll come to you first this time.
Yeah, I think ultimately he's on a high-powered, a good team, should we put it like that? So, yeah, I think you have to start him because he's going to be the wide receiver one in Houston. But I do think, losing both Diggs and Collins is going to be a big issue for Houston, and I think they're going to generally struggle because of that. Robert Woods, great, but really not anything much anymore. Like, he's a great veteran presence, but not really someone I want to have to rely on. I actually don't even know. Oh, John Mechie, is it Mechie? Is he injured or he's still there? But again, none of these guys are really guys that you want to rely on. So my worry with Dell is he's now the wide receiver one on the team. So he's probably going to get the most attention from the defense. And I'm just not sure that he's going to be able to, I suppose, get out of that attention and be able to kind of really separate himself to be able to get loads and loads and loads of targets and be massively amazing like these elite guys generally are. But he's a wide receiver one in a on a good team, so I'm gonna start him. But I would have I would measure my expectations, I think. To be honest, I think it benefited more when Nico Collins comes back in week 10, because I think, defense is going to have more attention on Collins, and then that gives Dell more of an opportunity. It's more of a two-headed monster again rather than that three-headed that we had when they were all healthy. So I think he'll do okay in week 9, but I'll feel much more confident about him in week 10 personally.
Yeah, John Mechie had his best game of the season so far, where he had 4 targets, 3 receptions for 29 yards. So he is somebody there that might see a bit of an uptick with this at the moment, to be honest, because they are getting a bit thin. He'll obviously see more targets. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Tank Dell might struggle when he's got the best quarterback or safety on him in their team, where he hasn't sort of had to do that with Nico Collins demanding all of the protection and stuff. So I think Tank Dell, this is a do or die. I feel like it's a do or die moment for him. He either comes out of this looking phenomenal, or he comes out of this and everyone's like, yeah, no, you're never gonna be an alpha in a team, But anything you guys want to add to that, Lewis? Do you want to add?
Yeah, so looking through Tank Dell's season so far, and I loved Tank Dell last year, and I liked him as a prospect as well coming into the NFL. Obviously, he was shot in the offseason. He also had that big injury that ruled him out of the end of last year, so it was a really strange offseason for him and a really difficult one. Looking at this season so far, no games with double-digit targets, only 1 game with more than 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns on the year. 1 game inside the top 28 at the wide receiver position, 4 games outside the top 40. I mean, even this week just gone, we're sort of talking about John Mechie's stat line is a bit disparaging. And Tank Dell, he finishes the wide receiver 29. He had 4 targets, 4 receptions, 35 yards and a touchdown. If he doesn't get that touchdown, you're talking about someone outside the top 50 wide receivers. I love the talent. My problem is, and this is an ongoing feature of my contributions to this episode today, you can't replace wide receivers like for like, and it's a lot more about the talent and the opportunity. Tank Dell is not Nico Collins. He's a great wide receiver in his own right, but he's not an alpha, and I worry getting a lot of attention. I think he's best either out of the slot or working sort of in the Z as a bit gadgety, very much schemed open. If you're trying to play him as an alpha, I think he's going to get completely blanketed. So, yeah, the opportunity's there. If they can be smarter in their play calling, which they haven't really shown an ability to be thus far this season, then maybe Tank Dell can thrive in the absence of Collins and Dell. But for me, I'm not immediately all guns blazing for him, because I don't think he's a natural fit for what this offense needs to replace, particularly Nico Collins.
Maybe a slight little hint at something that's maybe coming up a bit later, Lewis?
A little bit.
But guys, I want to add something else to the big news, because I've just seen a sleeper notification. Christian McCaffrey's potentially going to be back training this week. 49ers on bye. So all of these people that invested at 101 in Christian McCaffrey may actually get him playing football in week 10. Who knows?
Is it funnier if he comes back and scores and averages 30 points a game and wins people titles despite having done nothing for the whole of the season? Or is it funnier if he gets injured on like the second play when he comes back? If people are like so excited for him to come back and then he just immediately gets hurt again?
So I'd never wish an injury on any player ever.
No.
But I think it would be really funny if he gets injured on his second play, like, you know what I mean? Goes out, pulls his hamstring and ends up, and the 49ers absolutely bomb the season and just do nothing.
Yeah.
And don't go to the Super Bowl and crumble and, yeah. Sorry.
Cardinals and Rams joint win the division somehow.
Amazing.
I'm guessing that you don't have him on any teams then, Lewis.
I do, but I've lost hope for those teams, so I'm not too bothered.
Oh, I really have a couple of teams that I want him back on. So, come on, CMC, don't let me down.
I think I've got one. I think I've got one team where I took him, and that I've done really well to survive without him, and I think him coming back is a big uptick for that team, and really fancy it. So, yes, I'm speaking as a Cardinal fan, and my hatred for the 49ers. I think it'd just be funny, but yeah, guys, let's move on to what we learned this week. Who wants to go first with this one? Anyone want to volunteer to go first?
I'll take it because it's a running theme from what I was just talking about. So one of the things that I learned from this week, and we often talk about handcuffs at the running back position, and even quarterbacks and tight ends to a little bit because they're onesie positions. So you're not going to keep a quarterback on your bench in a redraft league unless it's maybe James Winston, in which case that came off. Whereas running back handcuffs you might keep. But obviously we know it's going to be the next guy up. With all of the wide receiver injuries this season, I think I have learned in this past week that opportunity is not the most important thing at the wide receiver position. It's just talent. And the case in point that I wanted to make from this is the difference between the Browns wide receivers and the Bucks wide receivers. So everyone was getting very excited about the Bucks wide receivers stepping in the absence of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And none of them really did anything. Like, I really like Jalen McMillan, but he's not shown anything in the NFL so far. Trey Palmer's a deep threat. Sterling Shepard is like 56 years old. People were getting really excited because the opportunity with the top two wide receivers out, and it really didn't work. Now, for the Browns wide receivers, it's the same starting three that it was under Deshaun Watson. But with Deshaun going out with James Winston coming in, they really exploded. So Cedric Tillman, I think, was the wide receiver 4 or 5 on the week. Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy both had really solid days. Elijah Moore went over 80 yards. Jerry Jeudy, I think, had like 60 or 70 yards. The talent for them is more important than the opportunity for the Bucs wide receivers, but people were way more excited about these like really under the radar, really not fantastic players just because of injuries up the depth chart. And I think it's a warning sign going forwards with all of these wide receiver injuries that we're seeing that like when Cooper Kupp and Buka Nakua got injured, Jordan Whittington wasn't that startable. Demarcus Robinson wasn't that startable. Like with Stephon Diggs going out and Nico Collins going out, I wouldn't be looking to throw in I think who's the guy I'm thinking of, Xavier Hutchinson or Robert Woods or John Mechie. I think you need to be looking at talent at the wide receiver position, not opportunity, because targets are earned. They are not given in the same way that running back carries are.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, but I also think that I think sometimes you have to play that opportunity game, because I know what you're saying, talent over opportunity and everything like this. And yes, but when it comes to injury, if you've got, I don't know, say for example, you've got Puka Nakua on your team. I know he's back this week. Chris Godwin on your team. And I'm trying to think, say Nico Collins. You had them 3 players on your team. You've just lost them 3 players. You've got 3 players on your team, or 3 spaces on your team now that you have to fill. And trying to find that talent is going to be really difficult at this point in the season. So now you're trying to figure out a way to get something there, which is where I lean opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, I am talent over opportunity all day, every day. And it isn't as easy as just going, like you said, Jalen McMillan, just chucking him in and all of a sudden he is the Chris Godwin of the Buccaneers, but if you've got nobody, it's trying to find somebody that's going to get some form of opportunity to put into that spot. We all wish that we could find somebody as talented as Chris Godwin to put in that position, but I do agree with what you're saying, though. It is talent over opportunity, but sometimes it's hard to find that talent to replace these injuries. You know what I mean? Like it. Go on, Hannah. You look keen to say something.
Yeah,
she's chomping at the bit. Yeah,
no, I just wanted to say something on that, just because I do think sometimes, and you can't always do this because some leagues don't have the ability to trade. So, example, Scottish Bowl, but a lot of redraft leagues allow trades, and I think people sometimes in redraft leagues forget that trading is an option. So, like let's say you've lost Nico. I know this is a few weeks ago, but let's just say, let's say you lose Diggs, right? And he goes on IR for a few weeks. Let's say it's not ACL, it's just some sort of sprain and he needs a bit of time. You could go to a contender, right? Whoever's first in your league and be like, look, I'll trade you Diggs for someone who, someone else that's doing okay, but, isn't quite as good or whatever. So you can then fill the space with someone more talented than the scraps off the waiver wire, and I think people do often forget that that is an option. As I say, it's not an option in all redraft leagues. Some redraft leagues don't allow trades, but a lot of them do. And very rarely do I see trades going down in redraft leagues. And I think a lot of people are missing a trick where, that you think, oh, I've lost these 3 wide receivers, I'm not going to make the playoffs now. But actually, if you were just quite clever with how you did your trades, you probably could squeeze into the playoffs and then actually maybe have some of those back if you've kept them, for the playoffs. So I do think people need to remember that trading is an option, and don't be scared to do it. I think people are like, oh, you only trade in Dynasty. I don't know values because it's not Dynasty, and nobody wants to do it. But I think it's worth going out there and being brave. If you want to win, right, you got to go and do something. Otherwise, you just end up bottom of the pack, and then what's the point?
I completely agree with that. I think trading should happen more, but the problem I find with trading is somebody always wants to win the trade, and that's when trades go absolutely Pete Tong for me. Somebody is always, and I'm not specifically saying it's me or anything like this. The one that's trying to sell is going, oh, I'll sell you this guy because he's really awesome, and he's trying to sell it to you. And oh, keep trade cut says this, and keep trade cut. And what I find hard with redraft is you can't go, oh, we're really close, I'll chuck in a third on this. I'll chuck in that 3rd round pick, which will tip it over the edge. It's it's trying to find that balance with the players, and I think it's so hard to get that balance right in redraft. I'd love to trade in redraft, I really would, but I just find it really difficult to find that right balance with just the players,
Yeah, I get that. I think sometimes you have to look at what are their needs and what are your needs, and can you, is there somewhere we can meet in the middle? And I totally get what you're saying, Paul. So many people want to be the person that won the trade. Look what I bought this for, peanuts. But if people just actually were willing to make deals that were fair, and like, okay, you need a running back, I need a wide receiver. Look, I've got 4 running backs. Why don't I trade you one of my running backs for one of your wide receivers? Like, it really is as simple as that, but people just don't seem to want to always do it. And I never get, I agree with you, Paul. I never understand why you've got to win a trade. Why can't you both just come away with something that you're both happy with?
Yeah, so you both win it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Why does one have to win over the other? If both of you make the playoffs, then it's been beneficial to both of you. So I just don't get that.
I don't know if you guys caught the 5-yard rush show last week where Murph was, and he was talking about like trading in redrafts and stuff, and he said the people on your bench score you 0. They score you nothing every week, and there could be somebody on your bench that you're holding on to. And you're going, I'm holding on to him just in case they get injured. Say, for example, you've got somebody and you're going, if they get injured, I can put them in my starting lineup. But if they don't get injured, you've held this asset on your team for 16 or 17 weeks, however long your league is. And you could have traded them to bring in something and use the asset to go and get something else, to build something else and stuff like this. And I was like, what you're saying is completely true. But if you go, and this is it's the values again, isn't it? It's where people go, oh yeah, but I think he's worth this, but actually you only think he's worth this. And I really wish there was more trading in redraft. I really do. I wish I traded more in Dynasty, but I just end up falling out with people.
But I do actually think that probably it's easier to trade in redraft than it is in Dynasty, because you're only doing it for the one season, right? I think people get less kind of hung up on winning the trade, and 2, like knowing what values are. Actually, I think it being murky about what you think a value is in redraft probably works to an advantage, where you can probably be a bit more reasonable with each other. But
I think part of the problem with trading a redraft is that, first of all, everyone's trying to win. So it's quite hard to find, like, you need to find a position where I'm strong at running back and weak at wide receiver. you're strong at wide receiver and weak at running back. And there might not be that in your league. Whereas in Dynasty, obviously, you have some people contending, some people rebuilding. So it's easier to find matchups of people going for younger players or veterans. The other annoying thing about redraft leagues are that you will reach a certain point in the season where people stop caring. And if you've gone, say you've gone 1-7 up to here, you have to be a very interested and very keen fancy manager to still be paying attention. A lot of people who aren't degenerates, the same as lots of people like us, a lot of people will have switched off by this point. So trying to get a trade done, people will just go, my season's over, don't worry about it. I'm sort of just occasionally setting a lineup and that's it from this point. I think it's harder to keep people engaged right up until the end if their team's not doing so well, which I think makes trading slightly harder.
Although go on, Paul.
Oh, go on. I was just going to say I completely agree with it. And I was also going to say I love the fact that we were talking about talent over opportunity at wide receiver, and we've gone on to trading in redrafts, and I love it. Love a rabbit hole. But what were you going to add to it, Helen? What were you going to add?
No, I was just going to say, actually, I think then you can just say to them, look, well, if you're not bothered anymore, if you
trade for good players.
Yeah, hell no. But this is a fair trade. I totally get that you're not bothered, but I don't see a reason why you wouldn't trade me in this at this point. Do you know what I mean? If you're not bothered and you just occasionally sit in a lineup, I'm not going to be like, trade me, I can't even think who even is up there. I don't know, Bijan Robinson for Troy Franklin. But, let's look at this reasonable trade. Totally get that you're not that bothered, but I'm really interested in your player, and I think this is a reasonable swap. I don't see what reason can you give to say no. Do you know what I mean? And they might not actually even look. That'd be the problem. They're like, or they don't even look. That'll be where you'll challenge. But if they do look, then I don't see why they would say no at trading. And I just think, you got to do it early in the season probably, or in one of your leagues where we're all in it and everyone's looking every week. But I do think the opportunity is there, and I think more people would win a championship if they actually actively try to make a trade. And I think people would stay interested for longer as well if they could think that, okay, maybe I've lost loads of these players, but actually I could trade and try and stay in this thing.
Yeah, and if anyone has managed to trade Bijan Robinson for Troy Franklin, can you please get in touch at Fantasy Wildcard Rewind, please, because we'd love to see that one. But yeah, Helen, let's move on. And what did you learn this week?
The National Tight End Day is actually a thing, and I do think that coaches try and get the ball to tight ends on National Tight End Day. I was like, this is stupid, they always say, National Tight End Day. But I'm telling you now, so 4 tight ends this week finished in the top 20 in overall fantasy scoring this week. So in the past 7 weeks before, we had 2 tight ends in the top 20 twice, in 2 weeks. So it's doubled in numbers. So I think that actually coaches and tight ends care about this day, and that this is the week, when it's coming up next year, this is where I'm going to be like, right, I'm going to consider starting tight ends in my flex, in some of these leagues, because particularly in these, long starting lineup leagues, where you're putting in players where you think, I just hope they get a touchdown, or I hope that they give me 5-10 points. They're going to try and get the ball to their tight ends today because everyone's talking about National Tight Ends Day. So I'm going to put a tight end in the flex on this day in the future. I think there was there 16 tight ends that scored a touchdown yesterday? I think it was the most of the whole season so far.
Well,
Yeah,
I was going to say, I'm looking on Fantasy Pros now, and week 4 of the NFL season, I've just gone back a couple of weeks. The tight end one scored 17.3 points, and tight end 10 was 10.3 points. And if you go to week 8, the one we've just had, the highest was 29.1, and up to tight end 19 was 10.8. So that's how
Wow.
many tight ends were in double digits this week. And we know how shit the tight ends have been so far this season. But more importantly, Hannah, who was tight end 1 on the week?
Do you know who was?
Yay.
He was overall fantasy scoring 1, I think. That when I
Was
looked
he?
earlier. K. Dotton. Am I
No,
right?
he's fourth. He's fourth.
Oh, maybe we're looking at different ones. But
CD Lamb, Jalen Hurts, Bo Nix, then K. Dotton.
oh yeah, yes. But fourth, I mean, come on now. Of skill players, he was second on the week.
And that was only because CD Lamb had 2 like garbage time long
2 pointless touchdowns.
touchdown throws, like, you know what I mean?
It's just I was a year early, same as Tank Bigsby. You see, I know that these players are going to be good. It's
Whoever you're bigging up this year is going to be good next year, yeah? Okay.
Exactly. So, just listen now and you'll know for next season.
But I love this because I love tight end week as well, because as Lewis knows, the Secret Sunday Touchdown Club
It's totally a secret now.
Came into the money, and we backed 3 tight ends. And also in another bet that I did, I backed 4 tight ends. So I had 7 different tight ends to score that day. If I'd have put the whole thing on as one big bet, I'd be loaded now. But I had 7, 2 touchdown accumulators came in. One was 4 tight ends and one was 3 tight ends, and they both came in. So I absolutely love tight end week. Bring me tight end week every week. Let's go.
I had something a few weeks ago, I think, talking about revenge games and basically talking about the fact that there's narrative outside of football that means that some games mean more to certain players than we see on the stat sheet. And I think that's why I really like this one, that it was annoying on the broadcast every single time that they're like, and on National Tight End Day. But teams are going to care more about this and players are going to care more about this. And it clearly was a thing yesterday. It cannot be a coincidence that many tight ends who haven't been scoring all season suddenly exploded on tight end day. So I think reading into the narrative of things is definitely something we have to do. I am quite glad it's not going to be National Tight End Day for another year, because it is quite annoying on Red Zone. But it made me 180 quid yesterday off our touchdown hacker. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it.
Also love the fact that the Washington Commanders have a play where they throw it to the tight end, and it's called Taylor Swift, which
is it?
I just love that. I love that. I love that shithousery. But guys, we've been talking loads, so I won't be long on this. So I'm starting to get to that point now where I'm actually starting to learn the people that I invested an early round pick in that are not good, and I just wanted to talk about one that's really sort of took my eye at the moment, and that's Anthony Richardson. He has missed 2 games this season, but everyone was going absolutely mad about Anthony Richardson and how good he is and how much he's, he can rush the ball. He's this Konami code. He's, people were arguing that he's a top 5 QB in Dynasty and everything like this. And everyone was all in on him. Week 1, he scored 27.1 points. Since then, his highest game was week 2, where he got 12.9, 7.1, 5.2, missed 2 weeks, 8.8, 12.5. That is somebody in redraft that you can drop. He is not going to help you win your title this year. I would genuinely rather start Jameis Winston. I'm trying to see where Jameis Winston is on this. What did he score this week? I can't find
He
him
was
on here.
quarterback 3 or 4, I think. He was quite high up.
Yeah. Jameis Winston is going to play. Now, don't get me wrong, he's not going to do that every week, but he is going to play the rest of the season. Give me Jameis Winston. Give me another guy, Daniel Jones. I'd rather start Daniel Jones at this point than Anthony Richardson on a weekly basis, And I don't know if you guys can think of a name off the top of your head of somebody that you're quite happy to drop. I know we spoke about Pat Mahomes before, about how he's somebody that's not helping you win titles. But for me, Anthony Richardson is genuinely droppable in redraft leagues now.
I think Travis Etienne, like, not quite droppable yet, but I think he'd be the other one that would come to mind for me as someone that, like, you have to just readjust your expectations at this point. Like, we know what we've seen from players at this stage: Mahomes, Richardson, Etienne. I'm sure there are plenty out there that we just don't think of. Think about, I mean, obviously not droppable, but the last few weeks for Tyreek Hill until obviously Tua came back, like, name value doesn't mean as much as 8 weeks of fancy performance at this point. So yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, Hannah, could you think of anyone before we move on?
No, I think that was the main. ETM was the main one that I could think of, but I'm sure there'll be more. I just need to sit down and think about it properly because it hasn't been the best fantasy year for a lot of players, has it? Lewis and I were talking a lot about Anthony Richardson before the start of this podcast, and we'll just end up going on another tangent. But I'm concerned about him generally. Now I really feel like he might be losing some of his confidence, or there's something not quite right there. I totally get his raw, and he's always kind of sprayed the ball, but something feels different, and I'm worried that he's spiraling down into this losing confidence zone. Not quite as severe as Bryce Young, but just one of those where I think, if we're not careful, we're kind of going to lose him as somebody who I think is going to be a reasonable starting QB in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I was offered a trade. I know it's dynasty, and I don't want to keep on this too long. So somebody offered. I've got Anthony Richardson, and he basically offered me 2 seconds. And I feel that at the moment, like, 4 months ago or even 3 months ago, laughed at and just gone, don't insult me with that, and declined it. And I don't know how I feel, but I feel that's kind of about where it is at the moment. And if anything, Hannah, like you said, he's kind of spiraling. And if he keeps spiraling, that's probably the most I'm going to get for him if he keeps going down this rabbit hole. And, I know they've asked, I can't remember his name, the head coach.
James Steichen.
That's him.
Yeah.
They've asked him if he's going to be starting next week, and he just sort of said, we'll evaluate everything and stuff like this. So they're, even the media's at the point where they're asking the question going, is he your starting QB? All of a sudden, if they get to the point where they go, he's not our starting QB, that's it. His values just hit rock bottom, like, you know what I mean? But I bet if the Dynasty guys are listening, they'll bring this up and tell us about how they feel about Anthony Richardson and their values on tomorrow's show. But I'll drop them a message as well. But guys, let's get into our main feature because we have spoken about so much. Each week we have 3 regular features: Stud, Scare, and Wildcard. This is I've completely lost where I was. This is our challenge that we're doing, where we each pick one from each, and we are going head to head, and we are competing against each other this year. Lewis, I don't know if you've got the scores in front of you because I haven't actually got it up in front of me. But I think it's pretty close.
I do have them up in front of me. So currently, Hannah is on 6 points, and Paul, we are both on 8.
Oh, okay. So we need to give Hannah more points. Okay, no worries.
I'm sure that'll work well over the next month. I reckon when I get back, I'm going to have like the most points by a large margin. I'm ready for that.
You better hope that the special guests that we've got in to replace you will step up to the plate. But yeah, so we are keeping track of the score this year, and the forfeit is the loser has to open the first show after the Super Bowl with a monologue of the other 2 hosts choosing, and that will be a lot of fun. I haven't told the guys that I am away that week yet, so that one.
we can reschedule.
I'm sure you can, man. I'm sure you can. But yeah, so let's start with the stud of the week. This is where we talk about an under the radar player who we think is going to smash this coming week. We'll get into who we chose last week. I'll start with myself. I chose Jameson Williams for the Detroit Lions, and he is a gambling, cheating, horrible piece of shit, and he's suspended. So I'm guessing I'll take the loss with that one and take an L because he didn't actually play.
Can we ever not pick a player that doesn't play? We either pick a player that
We
doesn't
have to
play or
find
is
a
on
way
Monday Night
somehow.
Football.
We've done it twice this week as well, so there's another player that didn't play later on. Lewis, you said Elijah Moore. He had 12 targets, 8 receptions, 85 yards, wide receiver 21. That was a solid effort, mate. But Hannah, you absolutely nailed the stud of the week. You said Darnell Mooney. He had 7 targets, 5 receptions, 92 yards, and finished as wide receiver 9 on the week. But as I said, I picked Jameson Williams, so I will take the loss with that because he's a knobhead. But yeah, so we shall get into our studs for this week. This will be so much fun. Hannah, let's come to you first. Who is your stud this week?
Okay, so I'm going to say Raheem Mostert this week. Now, I know he did pretty well in week 8, but he's been really nothing up until then. They're playing the Bills next week in week 9, who are giving up the second most fantasy points to the running back position. Now, obviously, I know that Achan is likely going to be the more fantasy relevant running back. However, I think this is a great opportunity for Raheem Mostert to get his touchdowns in again and be fantasy relevant. So I'm going to say Raheem Mostert.
I love it. And I know he finished this week as running back 12, but he's literally done nothing the rest of the season. So we will allow it. We will allow it. Lewis, who are you going with?
I have gone with Jacoby Myers. So I was looking at a few different things this week. And Jacoby Myers had a 23% target share. And obviously those targets are coming from Gardner Minshew, so they're not great. But he is the established wide receiver 1 on the team. Obviously there's also Brock Bowers. They're basically due a 25% target share each every single week. They are playing against the Bengals this week, who we know have a reasonably weak defense. The Bengals are actually slightly better against the wide receiver position than I thought, but they're below average against every position in fantasy, which is very exciting. That's irrelevant. I just thought it was important to throw it in there to tease Hannah. I think the Bengals offense is going to blow away the Raiders defense. I think the Raiders are going to be playing from behind. Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are the only targets worth their salt on the Raiders. So with a lot of passing volume against a pretty suspect defense, but playing behind as well, I think there's a chance for him to be really solid this week.
I really like it. And yeah, I hope the Bengals win because Hannah's not going to be here to gloat about it. So I
Guess
hope.
what? I'm going to be there physically at the stadium.
Are you?
Amazing.
I am.
You're going to be there for the Jacoby Myers breakout game.
I hope he really sucks now, and then you can make a video of him really sucking and send it to Lewis and go, "Oh, look at your picky shit,
Loser."
Do it, and just shout at him, Myers, you suck, Myers. But I've gone for Tank Dell this week as my stud. I think he may appear again as somebody later on, but I think this guy now has a chance to step up. He is. I'm not saying he's going to be an out-and-out alpha every week, but he is going to see plenty of targets, and we've seen that he can actually do it with getting these targets before. He's done it last year. He's received plenty of targets, got lots of catches, lots of yards, touchdowns, and everything like that. And he's got to do this for his team now. And this is his time. This is his time to shine. And I can't wait for next week when Tank Dell's gone for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 receptions. I can't wait. For it. But you'll understand why in a minute. But let's get on to the scares. And we'll just fly through these really quickly. Lewis, you said Tony Pollard was a scare this week. He had 20 rushes, 94 yards, 3 receptions, 23 yards, finished as RB19 on the week. I said Drake May. He finished as a QB 26. He left the game quite early on with a concussion. And Hannah, you nailed it again and said Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 2 targets for 2 receptions, 7 yards and 1 touchdown, and finished as wide receiver 46. So unfortunately, Lewis, you get a point here.
Yeah, I have a slight grievance with this one because obviously technically you were right that Drake May was correct to not start because he left the game in the second quarter. Whereas I picked out a player that genuinely did underperform in a tough situation, whereas yours was because of injuries.
That's not my fault, is it?
Do I get to officiate?
That's not my fault, is it? You know what I mean? I can't help it that the guy got knocked out. You know what I mean? So you're going to punish me because Drake May got knocked out? Is that what you're saying?
He was on. I was writing this up earlier because I had him as one of my waiver wire picks in a video last week, and he was, I think, the second top scoring quarterback through the first quarter. He still finishes QB 26. He played a quarter and a half.
Oh, okay. So
I'm going to end up. Hannah can pick. I'm going to end up with the point, but I think there's a small grievance there that it was because of injury, not because of genuine smarts.
Genuine smarts.
The thing is, I actually agree with you, Lewis.
So, but hang on, I feel like I'm being punished here because my guy got knocked out.
Yeah, but the thing is, it wasn't because he underperformed, was it?
But he did well in the first quarter, then gets knocked out, taken out the game. But I've got to take the loss. I'm going to take a point because Drake May got knocked out. I just can't. You need to explain that one to me. Somehow he's been knocked out, and it's like, oh, you get the point. Oh, okay. So I just don't understand that. That one needs explaining to me.
Well, the thing is, if he hadn't have had an injury, he wouldn't have underperformed. I think that was the point, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
And you were lucky.
That's fine. That's fine.
But that's just my opinion, and I don't know who gets to make the final say. Why don't you both take a point?
You get the final say here. Because
okay. Why don't my decision is you both get a point?
Yeah, but that works for you then, didn't it? Because we're now going further away. You both can have a point.
I was trying to be fair here, right? You're moaning, Paul, because we think you deserve a point.
I just don't.
And you think Lewis deserves a point
when a guy gets knocked out.
I think we should both take half a point.
Oh, Lewis. That's going to mess with my OCD.
Hey, Paul, I think Hannah should get the point.
Yeah, I totally do. Hannah, you suck.
Hey, my brave choices this season have blooming worked out an absolute treat. I've done great. Breece Hall, running back, whatever. When I picked him, Amon-Ra, wide receiver, and he was only wide receiver 46 because he got a touchdown.
I love it.
Well, please.
I've given us both a point, Paul. Because here's my thinking. Hannah's not here for the next few weeks, so we can influence the decision. And it will be really funny to watch Hannah have a clear lead, and then Murph and Mags absolutely ruin it for her.
Can't wait.
I know. I know I'm going to lose this season, and it's not because of me.
I'm actually dropping Mags a $5 each week for each pick.
You and I have got money. We've got cash to splash now after this week.
It's totally worth it as well. It's totally worth it. But right, let's get into our scares of the week. Lewis, let's start with you.
So I have gone with Texans wide receiver Tank Dell. Partly because I thought it was fun for Paul and I to go head to head with a stud and a scare. But obviously I talked through earlier today about why I think he's going to struggle as the alpha in the offense, that I think isn't a role that he's actually particularly built to do. I think he struggled this week, and the Colts defense is actually genuinely quite bad. Next week, they're playing the Jets, who are the second best team against the wide receiver position. They have one of the best corners in football in Sauce Gardner, who potentially could be matched up against Tank Dell to follow him around the field. The Jets have an incredible way of just sucking the fun out of every single game. So I think there's a chance they could do that here. And I think yeah, I think there's a world in which Tank Dell doesn't explode in the way that we want him to. But also, it's fun to have the same player for your stardom for my scare.
I do really like that. I do really like that. One of us is going to be smiling next week, and one of us is going to be really sad, and it's definitely going to be you.
It'll be Hannah anyway. She'll get points for both.
But Hannah, who are you picking as your scare of the week?
Okay, this week I'm going with Zay Flowers. They are playing Denver this week. That defense is blooming good. Like, that's the only reason that Denver are where they are at the minute, to be honest, in the playoff race, because of that defense. And I just think that Zay Flowers is going to have a tough time against them. So they're currently giving up the second fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. We know that Zay Flowers is their wide receiver 1, although saying that Bateman's really making a good case for that at the minute. But I'm going to say Zay Flowers.
I really like this pick. I do really like this pick. I think you could have nailed it yet again, and it pains me to say it, but I will say this: you're probably going to get a point next week.
No, for no good reason, for being good. It's not my fault. I'm too good for you too.
Yeah, well, hopefully he gets knocked out in the first quarter, and you just get a point for it anyway. Not that I'm bitter. But yeah, my scare of the week is Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts has had a couple of good weeks recently, and he is like he is tight end 4 on the season so far, and he's just coming off his biggest game so far, where he got 2 touchdowns. I think it was 2 touchdowns.
He did.
And so I've gone for Kyle Pitts, and I've just got off the screen. I did it. Oh, don't you hate when you've got it all up on the screen in front of you? So I've gone for him. They are playing the Dallas Cowboys this week, and I think that's just going to be a bit of one of them shit show games, and I just don't think much is going to happen, and it's going to be a disappointing game, and I think Kyle Pitts is not really going to do too much with that one. But with that, we are going to move on to our wildcard selection. This is our feature where we pick something completely random, and the more random, the better. So, Lewis, we'll start with you. You said the Raiders would put up less than 10 points against the Kansas City Chiefs. You were wrong. They put up 20. And you said Drake London and Chris Godwin would both be top 10 wide receivers. Chris Godwin's gone on IR because he hates you. And Drake London finished as the wide receiver 56.
So Chris Godwin ruined, because I'm going to take the point here. Chris Godwin ruined my week twice on this show, because he was my scare of the week last week, and it was before he'd played. And then I picked him to do really well this week, and he got injured in between.
It was partly him. It was partly the Raiders and Drake London as well. Like, you've got to let them have their moment as well. The Raiders decided they were going to score some points, and Drake London decided he was going to be horse shit.
Just incredibly wrong all round.
Do you know what I love about it? And I don't know if you guys listen to it. So, the Wildcard, the DFS show, Mags actually picked Drake London as one of the guys this week, and he was like, I may as well make some money off him, seeing as he's proving me completely wrong. And he just completely went to shit, and I just love that. I wish I was on the show. I wish I was on the show to wind him up about that one. So Kev, if you're listening, you have to wind him up about that one, because he did pick London as his guy this week, but I said that the battle of the rookies, Caleb Williams, what's his name? Jaden Daniels would win everything. He'd win more rushing yards, more receptions, receiving, more air yards, more rushing yards, more everything, touchdowns, the lot, which he did do. Caleb Williams had 10 passes for 131 yards, 10 rushing attempts for 41 yards. Jaden Daniels had 21 passes for 326 yards, 8 rushes for 52 yards, and they won the game. And Hannah, you said the Patriots would beat the Jets, which I absolutely loved that you got that right, because in my Survivor League that I do, a couple of people actually backed the Jets to win, and they lost. And Geno Smith finishes as the overall QB1, which you were close. He finished as a QB 28.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
So yeah, sorry, Lewis.
That's
Unfortunately, you get a point there. But let's jump on to wildcards this week. Hannah, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yeah. So as I said before, I'm going to the Bengals game in person this week. So far this season, they're 0-4 at home, so it's looking like it's going to be a great Sunday for me. So I'm going to do what I did last time, and I'm going to use my reverse psychology to hopefully give me a point and therefore have the Bengals win. So I'm saying that all of the AFC North teams lose this week. I think the Browns are playing the Chargers. I can't remember the exact matchups.
The Browns are playing the Chargers. The Ravens are playing the Broncos. The Bengals are playing the Raiders. And
the Steelers are on a bye.
Steelers are on a bye.
But I think, they're all games that should be winnable, but will probably be lost. And then I'm going to say that Gardner Minshew finishes as a top 5 QB. So, yeah, I'm ready for the point, hopefully, because that might mean that I've had a great time and that the Bengals have won. And if I don't win a point, that means that I'm totally depressed in America, having watched the Bengals lose to the even more terrible Raiders.
I promise you right here, right now, if the Bengals lose, that I won't text you with abuse.
I know that's a lie, Paul.
Because I think you're going to suffer enough knowing that you were there to watch it as well. So.
Honestly, I just can't explain to you how upsetting the whole thing is. Do you know what? The thing is, I wouldn't care. Like when you support a rubbish team, like I've supported them long enough to be like, meh, they're just rubbish. But when you actually have hope, that's where things go wrong. You hope, you think, oh my God, we've got an awesome QB, we've got bloody Jamar Chase, and what the hell are we doing? Friggin' nothing. It's very upsetting. Anyway, let's move on.
Lewis, what's your wild card of the week, mate?
I've gone for another AFC North team or another AFC North matchup. I think the Broncos Ravens goes for over 50 points. I think the Broncos are actually going to have a really good scoring day. I haven't reflected that in my picks so far this week, but the Broncos offense can move the ball, and the Ravens defense is really, really struggling. And then I've said Taysom Hill. So Taysom Hill had a really good game this past week. Juwan Johnson is injured. Spencer Rattler's been benched. I think there's a chance that Derek Carr might be back, but even when Derek Carr was playing, Taysom Hill was getting on the field a fair amount. And Alvin Kamara, we know, is playing with a broken hand. I think Taysom Hill could finish as a top 5 tight end this week.
I love it. I'd be excited to see that, to be fair, because I actually have a lot of shares of Taysom Hill. But yeah, so I've gone for the Browns to get a back-to-back win. I'm kind of going off what you were saying, Hannah. I think they go out and beat the Chargers, and they just beat the Ravens. So I think that would be amazing to see Deshaun Watson go down and the Browns go back-to-back wins, and just shows what life's like with somebody who's a better QB than Deshaun Watson. And I've also said that if Jordan Love is out, that Malik Willis finishes as a top 10 QB on the week. That is obviously if Jordan Love is out. If he is in, I will try and remember and pick another player, because you know what happens if we pick somebody that's out, and I don't want any more points. So I will keep an eye on that. But I'm going, if he is out, Malik Willis will finish as a top 10 QB on the week. And with that brings us to the end of the show. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on X at Wildcard Rewind, and head over to our YouTube channel. Search for us at Fantasy Wildcard, and make sure you give us a subscribe while you are there. Hannah, have a lovely time in America, and we can't wait to have you back and hear all about it. And we will see you in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, one of them. It's December, you're back anyway. Lewis, I will see you next week, and we will bring in our special guests. See you later, guys.
Take me back to the sun.